Okay, so I'm going to work on our hips predominantly today. So what I'd like you to do is to come and lie down on your back. And we're going to start with just a little bit of a sacral rollout, because that's quite nice if you've got any niggles in your sacrum. So remember, you're going to need some space behind you, so just check that wherever you are, you can take the arms all the way back. And then you're going to bring your knees onto your chest. Now, if you're in the early stages of your pregnancy, you might be able to bring them closer together. But as you go further on into your pregnancy, you're going to need to take the knees either side of your baby so that you're not compressing your baby. And then place your hands onto your knees, and then you're going to circle the knees around. And what this is going to do is massage your sacrum. So your sacrum is the back of your pelvis. And you might have some very interesting sensations as you do this. You might not have realised how sore your sacrum was. It's quite interesting, and the reason for that is because there's such a lot going on in your pelvis, and there's such a lot going on in your sacrum. As I mentioned earlier, it's this kind of defixating all of the ligaments so that it can turn into a hinge joint. So now what you might want to do, instead of circling, is to just move the thighs or the knees forwards and backwards. So it's like a up and down movement, or forwards to backwards. And this kind of massage is a different part of the sacrum. So you might have a different sensation here, a different experience. So this is a really nice move to do quite regularly, particularly if this is something that you're struggling with at the moment, so your sacrum is giving you a little bit of discomfort. But you do need to do it on a hard surface, so doing it on your bed won't have the same effect because you'll just sink into the mattress. So you need to do this on the floor. You don't have to do it on a hard floor. You can do it with a carpet on. And then just go back to rolling and see how that feels now. So you might find that it's eased out a little bit, that any of the kind of crunching or sensations might have eased a little bit. And then dropping the soles of your feet onto the floor. So you're going to start with the inner thighs together, and the feet together, and the legs are fairly close in towards your body. So we're going to do an opening and closing movement, both for the shoulders, the arms. So this will give you a stretch through the body as well, but also into the hips. So this is called a sunflower pose, which is quite a nice little name for this sequence. It's quite simple. So two things are going to happen. We'll go through the first round without the breath because it's going to take me quite a long time to explain all the elements of it. So the first thing that happens is that your knees drop out to the sides and the soles of your feet come together. So you're coming into this wide-legged position. So this is where you get the hip stretch. At the same time that happens, you're also going to take your arms all the way back behind you. Now there's an interesting thing here that most people, when you take your arms back, try and get them parallel to each other, and you just aren't really loosening very much in the shoulders here. So what I'd like you to explore is what happens if you take your elbows a little bit wider, and then what happens if you take your wrists wider than your elbows. And what you're aiming to do is to get every part of your arm to touch the ground, from your fingertips all the way down the arm, the elbow, the upper arm and the shoulder. And you get a much stronger stretch around the shoulder blades. And then that's all happening on the inhalation. On the exhalation, the arms reach back up over the head and down, and the knees come all the way back together. Okay? So that now is going to happen with your breath. So as you breathe in, knees drop out, arms reach all the way back. Again, try to widen them. So think about a Y shape rather than a straight line. And then on your out breath, the knees come together and the arms come all the way back down to the side. Just carrying on in that same way. So just letting the knees drop out. The arms reach back. And then easing yourself all the way back. So just continuing. Notice if it's feeling a little looser in the hips. Notice if it's feeling a little more spacious around your shoulders. And then just do one more repetition. And then when you're finished, just coming back into stillness. So the next move, we're going to work with a back bend. So this is called bridge pose. You might have experienced this before. It's quite a common yoga move. And what we're going to do is use it to stretch the front of the body. So we don't often get a stretch across the belly. So it's quite nice to get a bit of space in that area, particularly, as Jen is having these little kind of tight feelings. So just giving it an opportunity to stretch. But in addition to that, what you're also doing is strengthening the buttock muscles and the thigh muscles. So it's a strengthening move as well. One of the things you can do is to place a brick in between your thighs, if you've got one with you. And if you haven't, I've got a couple of spare ones, so I can come and help. But otherwise, you're going to start with your feet hip distance apart now. So walk the feet out until they're hip width apart. And you've got a couple of options. If you want to carry on stretching the upper body, you can actually do this stretch with the arms back on the ground and just leave them there. So if you felt that it was a really nice stretch for your upper body and your chest and your armpits and your shoulders, then do this stretch from here with the arms on the ground. But you don't have to. If it's uncomfortable, then you can have your arms down by the side of your body. The feet are fairly close into the buttocks, hip, thigh or hip distance apart. So you're going to push your feet into the ground, and then from that position, when you push your feet into the ground, the first thing that happens is your tailbone lifts away from the floor and your lower back gets pushed a little closer into the floor. And then if you keep pushing into the ground, then you'll start to feel that parts of your lower back start to lift away from the floor. Maybe a little bit of your upper back starts to lift away from the floor. So you're just climbing up into a gentle back bend. It doesn't have to be very high. We're going to do several repetitions, and they often get easier with each repetition. And then you slowly lower back down, aiming to get each part of your spine to release down into the ground independently. And then we're going to do the same thing again. So on the inhale, push your feet into the ground, let the tailbone lift, let the pelvis lift, let the lower back lift, and if the upper back wants to join in, that's fine, but you may still be working with a little bit of stiffness here. And then as you breathe out, you slowly ease all the way back down. And just carrying on in that same way. So inhaling, foot pushes into the ground. You use that strength to rise all the way up. Keep the thighs working strongly, keep the glutes in the buttock muscles working strongly. And then as you breathe out, gently peeling all the way down into the ground. So Charlie, what would happen if you took your wrists a little bit wider? Yeah, let's see, do you get a bit of a better stretch? So notice if it's getting a little bit easier with each repetition. And then just finishing the repetition that you're on. And then from here, you're going to come over onto your right side. So if you can't see, you might want to just sort of swivel around or maybe go the opposite side. So if you're dead opposite me, you might want to come long ways, or just slightly off to the centre. So it's not essential, because if you can see somebody else, you'll be fine. So we're going to start with the knees bent up, as if we're sitting on a chair, so a little bit of a bend in the knees. You're going to support yourself with your right elbow, so that hand can rest underneath your head, and then the left hand can come on the floor. The key thing here is to keep the ankles together. So this is a pelvic girdle strengthener. So when I was saying before about we need to strengthen and stretch the hips. So this is going to strengthen your inner thighs. So you're going to keep the ankles together, and as you breathe in, you're just going to lift the top knee. And then as you breathe out, let the knee drop down. And that's it. We're going to do 10 of these. So just count your own. We're not aiming necessarily to try and get it as high as we possibly can, because if we're thinking high, the chances are that we're going to take the top hip backwards, and then we're just going to roll backwards, and that's very different. That's actually the lower back instigating the move. What we want is this to go into the buttocks and the thigh muscles, so that you can feel these muscles strengthening. And this is really important to create some strength in the pelvis going forwards through your pregnancy and postnatally. Now, if these muscles are particularly weak or they just haven't really been used, then you might find that you can't do 10. The muscles might kind of get tired before you do 10. So that's absolutely fine. If you can only manage 8 or 7, then stop when the muscles can't do any more. And then we'll repeat the same on the other side in a moment, but it might be one that you might want to kind of maybe practice at home as well, because if these muscles are weak, you might be more prone to getting symphysis pubis dysfunction at some point along the way. So when you've done 10, or when you've done up to 10, as many as you comfortably can, you can stop. And then you're going to come onto your back, and we're going to do some twisting for the lower back. So this is the belly stretching. In fact, this, in its Sanskrit name, a lot of the yoga poses have got Sanskrit names, which is the ancient language of India. A little bit like Latin is the ancient European language. And this lying twist is actually called belly turning, Jatara Parvati. So this should give the belly muscles quite a nice stretch again. So we're going to come back to the feet on the floor, inner thighs touching position that we had before. But this time you're going to take your arms out to the side. So just drop them out at shoulder height. Bring your attention to your left shoulder and just let it feel really heavy. So this is going to be your anchor point. And then from here, just slowly take the knees over to the right side. Now the knees may not touch the floor, particularly if the back is tight. So what you might want to do if the knees don't come all the way down is you might just want to support the thigh with your pillow or a block, or place something underneath your thigh. And then you're going to bring the knees all the way back up to the centre. And then you're going to take the knees over to the left. But this time making the right shoulder blade really heavy, really anchoring yourself down through the right shoulder. And again, if you can't comfortably get the knees to the floor, you might feel that you want to just put something under the knees to support them. And then come all the way back to the centre. So we can do this in rhythm with the breath. So the next time you exhale, take the knees over to the right side, left shoulder fully anchors down to the floor. And then as you breathe in, the knees can come all the way back up to the centre. And then as you breathe out, the knees can come over to the left. And as you breathe in, they come all the way back to the centre. So can you just do that 2 more times? And like with all the other poses, it may be that the first few rounds feels a little tight. There might be some restriction in the lower back, but then as you continue to do the repetitions, you might find that it's loosening up a little bit and you're getting a little bit more out of the moves. Now the next time you go to the left side, which will be your last repetition, you're going to stay on the left side, and we're going to repeat that strengthening move that we did. So it's called clamshell, because the legs are opening and closing like a clamshell. So you probably don't need to see on this side because you've done it on the other side. So you're lying on your left side this time. The knees are bent. You're supporting your head in your left hand. And you're bringing the right hand on the ground to support you. So the ankles are coming together and they're going to stay together. And then as you breathe in, you're going to lift the right knee up. And as you breathe out, lower the knee all the way down. So we're going to go for 10 again. So Lexi, are you getting anything? I think it's Lexi, or is it Lexi? Yeah.
Yeah.
Your legs look a little bit kind of further away. What happens if you kind of bring them in a little bit more up towards you? Yeah, try there. See if that feels more like it's going in your glutes. Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you.
Notice how it feels on this side. So because this is the right leg now, if you're right-handed, there's usually the possibility that all of the muscles on the right side are slightly more developed because we use it more often. So you might find that the muscles feel a bit easier on this side, but you're not getting the same kind of weakness on this side. And the same thing again, so once you get to 10, you can finish, or if you get to 8 and you think that's all I've got today, then you can stop at 8. And then when you finish, you're just going to push yourself all the way back up until you're sitting. So sitting comfortably, maybe against the wall again, if you feel that you aren't quite supported enough just to bring into the room. So we're just going to be here for a few minutes. You can sit on a block or use a cushion to sit on. So just want to do a little bit of breath work. So the breathing practices that we do here, they're really nice to integrate into the posture work, and we can use them to make the posture work a little bit more meditative. But they're also really, really useful for labour as well. So there's a range of what we call birthing breaths. And usually if you come to enough classes, you'll get all of them. You can kind of experience all of them. So the one we're going to look at today is called ocean breath. So if you've done any yoga before, this is called Ujjayi breath. This is the yogic name for it. And it's a really nice breath. It slows down the speed of your inhalation and your exhalation. Whenever you do that, you slow down the mind as well. So the mind is going at 100 miles an hour. If you slow the breath down a little bit, you're also going to slow down the speed of your thoughts, which is why in the yogic tradition, the breath work is so important, because one of the things yoga is aiming for is this quiet mind at the end of it. So we can do that by just contracting a little bit of muscle around the throat. It can be quite tricky to do. So the best way to describe it is the same sensation, if you haven't done this before, that you make when you're kind of cleaning your glasses. You'll know, I wear glasses. If you don't wear glasses, you won't know how this is, but you all the live long day cleaning your glasses. But you might have cleaned a mirror or something. So you go, that contract in your throat is what you're looking for. So if you can go, then you can do this breath. All you're doing is doing it with the mouth closed. But then you do it on the inhale as well. And then you slow it down. And you end up with a little oceanic sound that you're making through this little constriction in your throat.
Now, if you haven't quite got it, sometimes it disappears when you try and do it. So if it has disappeared, then what you can do is do it externally first. So a really good trick is to do it outside mouth, so that you know you can do it. And then halfway through the next out breath, you close your mouth in the middle. But you don't lose the constriction around the throat. Okay, are you all alright? Has everybody got a bit of sound there? No, yes, no.
I found that harder when you shut your mouth halfway.
Shut your mouth, yeah, I think if you're used to doing it, yeah, it's like an alien instruction.
Yeah.
But it can help if people can't, if they don't know how to restrict this, you know, not sure what muscle do I, because it's not a muscle that you normally voluntarily use. It happens by itself, but it's not one that you have to think about. So just going to take a few more of these breaths with the aim of just slowing the breath down a touch and just listening to the sound of the ocean that arises. Do one more. And when you finish the next exhalation, you can just let go of that contraction around the throat. And then just notice how the breath is. Does the breath change a little bit? Does it feel a little bit longer? Notice how your mind feels. Does your mind feel different? Is there a little bit of quietness that may not have been there before? And the other thing that happens whenever we breathe consciously, we take more oxygen in and we release more of the waste gases out. And so quite often your baby gets a bit of a hit, a bit of an oxygen hit when you do this, any kind of conscious breath, but particularly that Ujjayi one. And so it's quite good, particularly towards the end of your pregnancy, if you're in the last few weeks of pregnancy, the fetal movements often slow down, so you might have noticed that, Leah. You don't get quite as many kicks, don't get quite as many elbows, because they've just not got the space to wriggle around so much. But we like that security of feeling the moves. And so one of the things that we can do to kind of initiate some movement, if you think, oh, I haven't felt any kicks for an hour or so, a couple of hours. So doing those breaths can sometimes be useful, and you might get a flurry of movements afterwards because they've had a bit of an oxygen hit. It's one of the few techniques. I've got quite a few techniques for waking sleeping babies up, actually, which are quite useful in the later stages, because you just want that security, don't you, of feeling a kick, feeling a hiccup or an elbow, even though it's not very comfortable. It's very reassuring. Okay, so you're going to come over onto your hands and your knees. So because we're on this slightly harder floor than we're used to, if you've got quite a thin mat, you might either want to put your cushion underneath your knees, or another little trick, if you haven't got a blanket or a shawl with you, what you can do, there is a way of kind of buckling your mat up in the middle and putting that bit under your knees. So you're kind of making a little bit of a fold for the knees. And then you might need to make sure that's kind of in the middle of your mat, so you've got some space for your hands to go. So we spend a lot of time on all fours. It's a great position for labour, great position for stage 1 and stage 2. So quite useful to get used to being on all fours. So we're going to do a little sequence here. We're going to use that ujjayi breath, the ocean breath that we've just been working on. So the first thing you're going to do as you breathe out is you're going to tuck your tailbone under, and you're going to squeeze your pelvic floor muscles as well, as if you're trying to lift your perineum up. And at the same time, you're going to roll your spine all the way up to the ceiling and press your hands in the ground so that your shoulder blades slide away from each other. So all that happens every time you breathe out. And then as you breathe in, just lengthening the spine, so flatten the back and then just lengthen the rib cage forward. So you're not tilting the head up and back, you're not dipping the lower back either, because that'll just give you backache, but you're lengthening the rib cage away from the pelvis. So this is something that's quite useful. So a lot of yoga over the years has been taught this dipping movement in this pose. Like arch the spine, dip. It's really bad for the lower back, really bad, because you're just hanging off your ligaments in the lower back. So when you do this move, ideally what you want as you come forward is to actually keep some length. Can you see the difference? But I'm drawing my chest forward. It's a stronger pose, whether pregnant or not. It's a much stronger pose because I'm stretching my belly now, not hanging off my spinal ligaments. So same thing again, exhaling with that ocean breath, tuck the tailbone under, engage the pelvic floor muscles, arch the spine to the ceiling with the shoulder blades separate. On the in-breath, flatten the back first, and then just at the end of that inhalation, lengthen the rib cage away from your pelvis. So that, Jen, might be, you're getting a good stretch there. So that's what I was thinking, this one's good for you, for just creating that space. Okay, so just a couple more times. So on the out breath, roll the spine to the ceiling, pelvic floor tucks under and tightens, arching through the back. And then as you breathe in, the back flattens, and then you draw the rib cage away from your pelvis. And because you've got this ujjayi breath now, this ocean breath to play with, you've got more time. The breath is a lot slower now, so you've got plenty of time to consciously think about the movements, think about where you're going with these movements. Okay, so we're going to do a bit more hip work here. I'm just going to move everything out of the way because you might need to check what you've got by the side of you, because you're going to be swinging the leg around. So the first move is to stretch the right leg back and tuck the toes under and then push the heel away. We're going to hold this for a couple of breaths. So for those who are new today, this is probably one of the most common moves that you'll be doing at home. This is your anti-cramp stretch. If you're getting cramp at night, yeah, Alexis Mar, there, you're getting the lovely cramp. Yeah. 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. Yep. Universal. Yeah, it's really common. So if you do this before you get into bed, you won't get the cramp. So you have to lengthen the calf muscle away. We do this by pushing the heel. So can you feel that stretch in your calf? And what normally happens is if you're quite prone to getting cramp, it's going to feel quite tight because the calf muscle is tight, and that's why it's cramping. So if you do this until it's not intense anymore. So once that kind of sensation has eased off a little bit, because you've lengthened the muscle, it shouldn't. I'm not saying it won't. We get the odd 1%, but it shouldn't cramp in the night. Okay, so from here now, you're going to slide the leg around. You're going to circle it, and then because our hand is in the way, you need to sort of bring it into a lunge position. And then you slide it all the way back out. So we circle the leg around as much as we can, and then we bend the knee, and then we slide it all the way out. So it's quite a big movement. So it's nice to bring some space into the hips. And again, once more. And then this time, we're just going to take it halfway. And then from halfway, just going to walk your hands back and rise all the way up. And I've come off the top of the screen, so I'll go and fix that. So what you're looking for ideally is to have your left thigh vertical, right leg out to the side. And then we can start with the hands on the hip, and then you can see how you go. We're going to lengthen through the left side of the body. So we're going to take the arm up. And then the first thing we're going to do is to lengthen the rib cage away from the pelvis. Now you can stay here. If you want to go a little bit further, you can just start to ease your right hand down the right leg. And you can stop at any point when you feel that you have stretched enough through the side of your body. And then easing yourself all the way back down, lowering the hands, and then bringing the hands all the way back down onto the floor, sliding the leg all the way back around. I'm going to come back sideways, and then you're going to bring that knee forwards. You're going to bring it all the way forwards, and just walk the left leg back, and then drop the hip to the right, drop the hip to the left. So this gives a really nice stretch into the psoas muscle and quad on the left side. Everyone okay so far? And then from here, you can tuck your toes under on the back leg and then push into your hands and bring the knee all the way back. So we're going to come into downward facing dog next, but you might choose to not do this. If you're towards the end of your pregnancy, just going upside down just might be just more effort than it's worth. In which case you can come back onto your heels, keep the toes tucked under, maybe stretch the spine this way. So this is your alternative. Obviously you need to make some space for your baby between the knees, toes tucked under, hips all the way back to the heels. If you want to come up into your downward facing dog, spread the fingers, tuck the toes under, push into the hands, and then just start to ease through the backs of your legs. So you don't have to get the heels on the floor, but you do want to push your bottom up towards the ceiling and back towards the wall behind you, so that you can get some stretch in the spine. And then bringing the knees all the way back down to the floor, coming back into your all fours position, and then we're going to do that whole sequence again on the other side. So just working back into your Ujjayi breath, your ocean breath, catching the breath in your throat. So this time, now you know what you're doing, you can make the moves a little bit more mindful, quieten the mind a little bit. Next time you breathe out, tuck your tailbone under, squeeze and lift your pelvic floor muscles, arch the spine towards the ceiling, let the shoulder blades gently slide away from each other. As you breathe in, lengthen the back, flatten the lower back, and then just elevate the rib cage away from the pelvis. And then same thing again, start with the tailbone, then the pelvic floor, then the arching of the back, and then just that drawing away of the shoulder blades. And then on the inhale, flattening of the back first, and then the drawing forwards of the rib cage. Just do 2 more of these movements. Just let your breath guide you. And then from here, we're going to go back into the calf stretch. So now the left leg is going to be the leg that you take behind. You're going to push the heel away. Just find that point where you're getting the stretch into the calf muscle and just hold it. So again, if cramp is something that you're getting, do this before you get into bed. So it'll take you 2 minutes, 3 minutes tops before you get into bed, but it will make
your evening's so much better if you're not waking up in the middle of the night. Well, there'll be one less reason to wake up in the night. So once that intensity has eased out of the calf muscle, we're going to make that circular movement with the left leg. So I'm going to slide the leg out, and you go as far around in the circle as you can until you need to bend the knee at the side of the wrist, and then you slide the leg all the way back out. And then do the same thing again. So you circle the leg around until you need to bend it, and then you straighten the leg all the way out. So all the while working with that ocean breath. And last time. And then you're going to circle it halfway, so just as we did before. And then from here, you're going to walk your hands back towards you and rise all the way up. So you want the right thigh to be vertical, and then left foot to be in line with your knee, hands onto the hips again. And then just exploring the length through the right side of the body this time. So the right arm floats up. And then the first thing to do is to lengthen the rib cage away from the pelvis. Now again, that may be as far as you want to go. You can just explore that. If the wrists are aching, then maybe do some little wrist circles here. Oh, that's nearly everybody. Had you on all fours for too long, myself included. And then, if you want to go a little bit deeper, you can start to explore sliding the left arm down the left leg, but it doesn't have to go very far. Just take it to wherever you're comfortable. And just enjoy that bit of space to the side of the waist, side of the ribs. And then gently rise up. Bring the hands down. And then walk the hands all the way forwards again. Slide them back out behind you. The left leg. And then slide the left knee all the way through between your hands. And then let the right leg lengthen all the way back. So just doing the hip drops on this side. So drop the left hip over to the side, right hip over to the side. And just do that a few times. And then from here, just tuck the toes under on the back leg so that you can push the knee all the way back. Now keep the toes tucked under. You're going to walk your hands back, and then you're going to lift the knees up off the floor, drop the heels so that you can dangle forwards, and then slowly climb all the way up. So I'm just going to move this back just a touch more. So grab a quick drink before we do some standing practice. I'll do that one. Quick pump break. How's the sacrum feeling?
Not there actually.
Was it rolling at the beginning?
Yeah, and then I think when we were doing that, I could really feel it like it was hurting, but I think it's done it good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can't feel it now anymore.
Perfect. Good. Yeah. Are you feeling better as well?
Yeah, I feel it was very tight when I think that I need to do a few more of them in the week to keep loosening.
Yeah, perfect. As I say, it might have just been that week off. Might
Yeah.
just make a difference. You know, it was so hot that we,
nobody could do anything. Couldn't go out, couldn't move. Okay, so we're just going to do a little bit more strengthening work through the pelvis. So the first thing to look at really is something to kind of carry on throughout your pregnancy, is to check in with your standing posture, because it's going to change all the time. Your centre of gravity is changing every time you have a growth spurt. And so what normally happens in pregnancy is the belly gets bigger, so it pulls the pelvis forwards. Then it gets bigger and it pulls the pelvis forwards again. But we don't walk around like that. So what we tend to do is we draw the chest back, and then we get this horrible pinching in the lower back. So lower back pain is really common in pregnancy, and a lot of it is coming from this over-rotation of the pelvis. So it's quite good to check in from time to time, and it all starts in the feet. So you're bringing your awareness into the feet, and then you're going to try and really nuzzle your feet into the ground. So because just rolling through the soles of your feet. And this can be quite interesting if you haven't done this before. Some people have got quite stiff feet. And if you've never done any yoga, never done any dance or tai chi or anything where you're kind of in bare feet a lot of the time, or if you're just not generally a barefoot kind of person, you might not have a lot of articulation between the bones in your feet. And ultimately that's going to feed up through your ankles, through your knees, through your hips, through your spine and up into your neck. So you could have niggles anywhere along that journey because it's all connected. So just finding some looseness. And again, if you're not used to doing this, it's a good practice to do. They say like rolling on a tennis ball, all of these things. And walking barefoot is the best time of the year for walking barefoot. It's really particularly on uneven ground. So just loosening all the little tightness between the bones of your feet. And then just seeing if you can place the four corners of your feet on the ground. So when we say the four corners, if you imagine you haven't got any toes and you've got a rectangle, and you want the four edges of your rectangle, so the ball of your foot between the big toe, same place on the little toe, and then inner heel, outer heel. So if any part of those are more favoured to your weight, then that can often show up as a bit of a wonky posture. And for years, a really good example, for years and years and years before I really addressed this, all my weight was in the balls of my feet. And as a kid, this was my posture. Even now I have to really work at bringing it back. I used to love hanging off my back and pushing everything forwards. And all my weight was in the balls of my feet. It's taken me years to bring weight into my heels because my body feels all like kind of pulled out of shape. And it's not, it's pulled into shape. And this is often, what might be happening in various degrees with postural misalignment. The other thing to think about is what's happening in the knees. If you lock your knees, it naturally pushes yourself forward. And again, if I was a habitual knee locker, so just see what happens to your back, to your lower back, if you lock your knees. Can you feel the difference? Now, if you can't feel the difference, it might be because you might be like me, habitual knee locker. So if you unlock them, and that took me years to learn as well, years and years to unlearn locking my knees. And now I can do it, but it took a long time. But again, you'll just end up getting back, particularly in pregnancy, you get backache. So soft knees, they don't have to be bent, but they need to be unlocked. And then where's your pelvis? Where is it? Is it tucked under? Is it tucked the other way? Or does it feel nice and centered? What about left to right? Is it over this way? Is it over this way? Or is it nice and centered in the middle? And again, a lot of that will come from where's the weight in your feet. So if you've got more weight on the right side, this is something that women tend to do, isn't it? We tend to favour a hip. So we might have more, I'm exaggerating obviously, but this is kind of what's happening, like more weight on one side. So just check what's happening. And then the last thing is to just gently, lightly elevate the rib cage away from the pelvis. It's a very subtle movement, it's not military fashion, but you just want that little bit of elevation. So just notice the difference, like collapse through the, oh look, you lost an inch. And then just a subtle lengthening.
And that's a really key one. Firstly, can you feel your abs? Just having a little bit of a workout. Obviously, we can't do a lot of ab work in pregnancy, nor would we want to. In fact, people that have rock hard abs tend to have the biggest percentage of presented babies, meaning breech babies, transverse babies. There's no room for them to move because the abs don't stretch as much as in women who've got slightly more give in their abs. So you get a little bit of ab strengthening, but also more space. So just that little bit of a lift gives a bit more space for you and your baby, because at the moment you're both fighting for space, you know, and someone's going to win and it's not going to be you. Okay, so just noticing how that feels. Now we're going to do a balance. So you're going to shift your weight into the right leg. And then you're going to come onto the ball of your left foot and you're going to turn the hip out. So another little hip move. Now there are various places you can put your foot depending on how much balancing do you want to do. You've got a very soft spongy mat, so Melissa and Charlie, that's both you. You might find that it's not giving you enough support, so you might just want to gravitate onto the floor. So first position is to just run the sole of your foot to the inside of your ankle, and even then you might think, whee, got a little bit of a wobble going, so that might be all you need to do. From there, if you feel a bit brave, you can slide the foot up to the inside of your shin. You can take it a bit higher. Now you don't want it over the knee joint, it's not good for the knee joint, so avoid this space here, and then in the fullest extension or variation, you can actually place, you might have to put your hand there, place it to the inner thigh. Now again, soften that right knee, spread the weight into the four corners, drop your gaze on the floor, and then just float the arms out to the side. So you want shoulders relaxed, but imagine you are lightly stretching. These are the branches of your tree, so this is called tree pose in English, Vrikshasana in Sanskrit. And we don't want the shoulders to be hunching up. We want soft shoulders, lengthening. Now don't forget to breathe. It doesn't make it easier if you hold your breath. And also there may be little wobbles, so trees blow with the wind, don't they? They don't stand rigidly, so if you find there's a little bit of a wobble one way or the other, it's absolutely fine. Brilliant, lovely, nicely done. And then come down. So it's something very calming. They have a really calming quality, I find, balances. I think because you have to spend so much of your mental capacity holding the balance, there's just no space for anything else. So just going to shift the weight from side to side, roll through the feet again, so just as a neutralising practice. And then coming back to stillness, and this time we're going to balance on the left leg. So you're going to spread that foot really firmly into the ground, unlock the knee, shift the weight into that left leg, and just outwardly rotate the right leg. So first place, just bring in the sole of the foot to run up the inside of the ankle. Again, that can be it. That's a balance. You might want to slide it up a little higher. You might want to slide it a little higher. You avoid the knee. And you might be able to bring the leg all the way up now. Fix the gaze on the floor. Don't look at me, don't look at anybody else. Keep the breath going. Try not to lock everything rigidly. Find some softness here. Lovely. Really good. And you can just gently ease all the way out. Give the legs a little bit of a shake, the hips a shake. Okay, so we're just going to do a nice little, another little hip opener. Also quite nice with the shoulders and the upper back. So we do this one quite a lot in the classes. It's one that I favour because it's kind of hitting all the tricky spots, hips and shoulders and back.
So everything gets a good stretch. So you need quite a wide strideness, and you're going to shift the weight from side to side. So you can take the feet where you feel that you want them to be, and then just experiment and explore with shifting the weight to one side and then shifting the weight to the other side. So essentially going to stretch on the inside of the thighs. So just place your feet where you feel you're going to get that best expression. And then we can bring the arms in, so we're just going to waft the arms from side to side. And you're going to go back to that ocean breath. So imagine that you are moving your hands through seaweed. Did anybody see the My Octopus Teacher?
Oh yeah, yeah, I did.
Just think the seaweed there, it was like 20 feet tall, wasn't it? Really big seaweed forests where the octopus was living. If you haven't seen it, it really is worth watching. It's quite magnificent. Who knew there was so much to learn about octopuses? So we're going to go a little bit deeper with this and introduce more of a stretch for the upper body. So now when you shift your weight to one side and the arms have wafted over to that side where the knee is bent, you're now going to sweep your arms up and over as you shift. And then you're going to go down to the ground as you shift to the other side. So essentially you're making a complete circle with your arms as you shift your weight from side to side. But rather than using your shoulders, so we don't want to put more tension in the body, you're going to use your rib cage. So that little lifting through the rib cage. And do one more circle in this direction, and then we're going to change and go the other way. So now you go from the opposite direction, circling up and over, and all the way down. So that ocean breath is still there. And then the next time you come into the centre, up above or down below, you can just relax. And then to come in, you're going to bring the toes in and the heels in. So we're going to very gently bring ourselves back together. And then have a little bounce here. So this bouncing is really good. It gets rid of any residual tightness that you might have picked up. It's like a rehydration of the cells in the body. Okay, all good? Anybody got anything else that needs a stretch, or we're all done? So we're going to come down, we're just going to sit for a short time, do a little bit more breath work, and then you're going to come and lie down for the last 10 minutes. So if you wanted to get anything that you needed for eventual lying down, you might want to put something warmer on. So whatever seated position works for you, if you're more than 34 weeks pregnant, you might not feel comfortable having the legs crossed now because it just congests the blood flow. So you might want to take the legs in a more open position, maybe having the soles of the feet together, or you might want to have the legs stretched out in front, so whatever works for you. We're going to work with Bhramari. So this is bee breath. This is another really calming birthing breath, but it's calming for you, but it's also calming for your baby, which is very good news. Because it's quite stressful for babies being born, as much as it's stressful for us. So having this nice soothing, vibratory sound that you're making can be quite soothing and calming for your baby as well. So it's a very traditional yogic breath work, and all you do is you hum. So I don't know where it came from, but it must have in trance states, in when in very, very, very olden days, hearing that buzzing of bees must have been very calming and soothing. So a lot of yoga came from looking at nature, like trees, mountains, dogs, bees. So all we're going to do is hum on the out breath. But what you can do if you want to is you can integrate it with a little bit of stretching. So I'll show you how this may go. So you can use the inhalation. So the inhale just happens naturally by itself. You can raise the arms up. And then on the out breath, you can bring the palms of your hands together. Bring the hands down through the center of your body. And at the point where your baby is, you can continue that downward move by stroking all the way down over your baby. So that last little bit of your out breath can really just give your baby a nice stroke. You can do round strokes if you like, or straight down strokes. And that happens with the humming. So it looks like this. And carry on, do the same thing. Don't worry about keeping time. You can all hum at different times if that fits in more with how you want to breathe. So don't feel that you have to keep breathing in time with everybody else. So just do a couple more. Remember that this is more about creating these calming vibrations for your baby. Not necessarily about having the best tune. And then the next time you finish your bee breath, you can just relax. Notice how that feels. Notice how it feels for you. How does your mind feel now? Noticing how it feels for your baby. So this is another of these practices that can awaken and enliven your baby. So as well as being calming and soothing for them, it can often kind of make them kind of wake up and have a little bit of a jiggle. Okay, so for the last few minutes, you're going to come and lie down. Now that's only if you wish. This is the relaxation part of the class. However, if you're more comfortable sitting up, then you're much more welcome to stay in the seated position. Make sure that it's comfortable for you. If you want to lie down, then again, you've got some options. If you're less than 20 weeks into your pregnancy, then you can still lie on your back, providing that it feels comfortable for you. After 20 weeks, it puts a little bit too much pressure onto the vena cava, which is the blood vessel taking the blood back to the heart. So you can lie on your side, and actually left or right is absolutely fine. It doesn't matter which one. Use your blocks, your pillows, anything that you want to make yourself as comfortable as you can be. And to spend some time easing yourself all the way down into the ground. And just allow yourself, first of all, to find stillness. Allow your body to ease down. Create a sense of relaxation, softness, and letting go. And you can begin that process of letting go around all the toes, the soles of both of your feet, the tops of both of your feet, both of your ankles, your calf muscles, both of your shins, both of your knees, and then relaxing up into your thighs, right up into your hips. And then move this feeling of letting go into both buttocks, both hip sockets, your lower back, the whole of your belly, the whole of your upper back, both shoulder blades, the whole of your chest, both shoulder sockets, both upper arms, both lower arms, both hands, and all of your fingers and your toes. Take that feeling of letting go into your neck, your throat, the jaw, the lips, cheeks, ears, nose, eyes, eyebrows, forehead, temples, the whole of your scalp. And just feeling this wave of softness, letting go, relaxation throughout the whole of your body, from the tips of your toes to the crown of your head. And then move your awareness to your breath. Begin to feel the sensation of your breath through the nostrils. And then begin to make the next breath a little bigger. So breathe more consciously, with more awareness. And then as you continue to breathe deeper, breathe slower, breathe more consciously, start to mentally and physically prepare yourself for the end of our session. So at this point you might want to start to externalize your awareness. So just being aware of the sounds you can hear, being aware of all the sensations in your body. And then maybe starting to bring some movement, wriggling the fingers, wriggling the toes, maybe stretching anywhere that you feel you need to. And then in your own time, gradually, slowly, carefully make your way all the way back up until you're sitting. And just take a moment to just notice how you feel. How does your body feel? How does your breathing feel? How does your mind feel? And just sending your awareness and your love down into your baby. And taking the arms up and over the head, and then again just having a little stretch. And then bringing the hands down into the heart space. Thank you so much for your time and your attention, lovely Yogini Mamas. Namaste. Have a wonderful week.
Thank you so much.